building of the church. I don't want to take too much of Brother Tom's time. But, if I can see to read this, even with my buddy Holly glasses. God talks about love in the Bible. There's 3 types of love. And but what is love? Can we define it? You know, love for our God, love for our church, our family, our fellow man. And like I say, the Bible speaks of 3 types of love. And the first is God's love for man. 1 John 4:8 says we're told that God is love. This means that God's love is rooted in the very essence of God. John 3:16 says God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. And whosoever believeth on him should not perish but have everlasting life. Romans 5:8 says, God commendeth his love toward us, and that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Malachi 1:2 says, I have loved you, saith the Lord. That's God's love for man. Number 2 is love of man to God. This is our gratitude for this love which we have received from God. Deuteronomy 6:5 says, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart, and with all thine soul, and with all thy might. Proverbs 8:17 says, I love them that love me, and those that seek me early shall find me. 1 Corinthians 2:9 says, But as it is written, eye hath not seen, ear hath not heard, neither have it entered into the heart of man the things that God has prepared for them that love him. And 1 Corinthians 8:3 says, But if any man love God, the same is known of him. And the third is love of man for man. This love is not just for our friends, as the Pharisees loved their friends, those that loved them. But it's for all men, even for our enemies. Matthew 7:12 says, Therefore all things whatsoever ye would do that men should do unto you, do ye also unto them. John 15:12, This is my commandment, that ye love one another, as I have loved you. Romans 19:12 says, Let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil, cleave to that which is good. Be kindly affectionate one towards another in brotherly love. Honor, preferring one another. Without love, no community, regardless of the name that we use, can claim to be the church of Christ. We don't have love in our hearts. Just God had love for us. As Brother Tom brings a message.
Thank Brother Paul, and thank each of you all for being here today. If you'll turn with me in 1 Samuel, I started out the first of the week thinking that I knew what I was going to discuss today, and as usual, the Lord has his way and led me somewhere else. If you'll turn to 1 Samuel 8, I want to read a few verses there, and then we're going to talk out of 1 Samuel 15. And I encourage you to go back, and as Joe always says, to read the whole book, but especially if you'll go back to the 8th chapter and read through about the 16th for this message today, to get an understanding of what was going on during that time. Used to, Dan would title his messages, and if I titled this one, the point that I want to bring out today, or or the Lord wants me to bring out, is the word hearken. And do we hearken unto the Lord? And let's find out what happens to someone that didn't. In chapter 8, the first 6 verses there, it says, "And it came to pass," and in this message today, if I get Samuel and Saul interchanged, sometimes I did that even when I was studying, and I have a time because they're both with S, so keep your ears open. Hearken unto me today that I may present it the correct way. And it came to pass when Samuel was old, and that he made his son judges over Israel. Samuel was a judge over all of Israel, and he's getting to a point where he needs someone else to take his place. And this is what he's done. It says that now the name of the firstborn was Joel, and the name of the second was Abiah. There were judges in Beersheba, and his sons walked not in his ways, but turned aside after lucre, and took bribes, and perverted judgment. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together, and came to Samuel unto Ramah, and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the other nations. But this thing displeased Samuel, when they had said, Give us a king to judge. And Samuel prayed unto the Lord. It wasn't what Samuel wanted to do, even, what was going on with his sons, judging them inappropriately. And the thing that he done, they wanted a king, and he thought, I'm going to seek the Lord. I'm going to go to him and see what the Lord would have me to do. So as we go to the 15th chapter, Samuel has prayed to God, and God's told him what to do. And if you'll read down through those chapters, you'll get that. But Samuel also said unto Saul, The Lord sent me to anoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore hearken thou the voice of the words of the Lord. And today, as we hear messages and as we study, we need to hearken until the message that God sends to us. Now hearken is, it's used twice in this text here this morning, but it has a little bit different meaning each time. And according to this word, it means to hear intelligently. He's telling Saul, I want you to listen to me. I want you to listen to me intelligently, and I want you to listen to me with obedience and with attention. And today, as I said, we have the word of the Lord written, so we need to hearken unto that. Verse 2 says, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I remember that, that which Amalek, I'm going to put my glasses on, that which Amalek did unto Israel, how he laid wait for him in the way when he had come up from Egypt. Now, if we go back in the Bible and we look in Exodus 17, 8 through 16, we can read about how Joshua fought Amalek. And if you go back and read that account, it tells you how that Moses had to hold up his hand, and as he was holding up his hand with the sword, Joshua would do well. But after a while, he'd get tired, and that hand would come down, and they had to actually prop him up on a rock, and 2 people had to hold his hands up so that they would fare well in that battle. So go back and read that as well. And in Deuteronomy, I want to read to you again how this all comes to play in the 25th chapter of Deuteronomy, verses 17 through 19. Remember what Amalek did unto thee by the way when you were come forth out of Egypt, how he met thee by the way and smote the hindmost parts of thee, even all that were feeble behind thee, when thou wast faint and weary, and he feared not God. Therefore it shall be, when the Lord thy God hath given thee rest from all thine enemies round about, in the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it, that thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven, thou shalt not forget it. When God makes a promise, sooner or later he's going to come forth with that promise, and that's what he's telling them here. Do not forget it. We're going to blot him out sometime later. So he tells Saul, he says in verse 3, Now go and smite Amalek, and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and sucking, ox and sheep, camel and ass. God has ordered Saul to go and annihilate this community. And I sit and think about it. These are the orders of God. This is what he's told them to do. And can you imagine something like that happening today? That someone come into a community, kill the old people, the men, the women, every animal, the infant children, utterly destroying it. We'd be outraged. Yet this is what God had told. And you have to sit and think, this is the same God that we serve today that was given those orders then. And again, going back and trying to tie all this in Exodus 20:5, the word says, "For I, the Lord thy God, am jealous God, visiting iniquity on the fathers and the children, and to the third and fourth generation of them that hate me." Amalek hated him. I read that to you in Deuteronomy a while ago. So now it's come to pass it to different generations that he is going to annihilate them because he made that promise, and it's going to come to pass. As we go on down there in verse 4, it says, "And Saul gathered the people together and numbered them in Telerim 200,000 footmen and 10,000 men of Judah. And Saul come to the city of Amalek and laid wait in the valley. And Saul said unto the Kenites, Go depart ye down from among the Amalekites, lest I destroy you with them, for you showed kindness to the children of Israel." God hasn't forgotten that either. "When thou came up out of Egypt, so the Canaanites departed from among the Amalekites. And Saul smote the Amalekites from Havilah until thou comest to Shur, that is over against Egypt. And he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword." And listen to verse 9. "But Saul and the people spared Agag, and the best of the sheep, and all the oxen, and all the fatling, and of the lambs, and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them, but everything that was vile and refuse, that they destroyed utterly." He took the king alive. He kept the best of the animals. He kept the best of anything that was good. But let's go back and look at number 3 there again. He says, "Now go and smite Amalek, and utterly destroy all the city, all they have, and spare them not, but slay both men and woman, infant, sucking, ox, sheep, camel, and ass." He didn't do what he was told to do. He did what he wanted to do. We go there in verse 10, it says, "Then came the word of the Lord unto Samuel, saying," At that time there were prophets, and if we read in Hebrews 1:1, that tells us in that dispensation of time that God spoke to those prophets, and those prophets told men. So God has come to Samuel, and he said, "Listen to me." In verse 11 it says, God says, "It repenteth me that I have set up Saul to be king, for he has turned back from following me, and hath not performed my commandments." And it grieved Samuel, and he cried unto the Lord all night. He's telling him, Saul has not performed what I told him to do. I told you, you told him. And so now Samuel's in the middle position here. Have you ever been given an order by somebody to take to somebody else, and then they didn't do it, and you kind of feel responsible because you did what you were told to do, and you gave it to someone else, but yet they didn't follow? And you see, Samuel had always been honest. If you go back and read, and everything that he did it exactly how God wanted him to do. And now here's his replacement, and he's not filling the shoes as he did. And Samuel feels bad about that. God's upset, and Samuel's in the middle. He cried all night. It bothered him. He has somebody that's fulfilling his shoes, and he can't do anything about it. And he's not doing what he's supposed to do. And if you go over into the 16th chapter, the first verse, and it says, "And the Lord said unto Samuel, How long wilt thou mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel?" God's already made up his mind. He's not going to reign anymore. He's saying here, "Fill thy horn with oil, and go, and I will send thee to Jesse and Bethlehemite, for I have provided me a king among his sons." When we're in the middle sometimes and we grieve and we worry as he did here, God's saying, get over it. Move on. It's not your fault, Samuel, what he did. So let's move on and go about our business, and let's not lament over this forever and ever. Let's do what we are to do. And sometimes we get put in that position today that we worry about someone and then realize that there's nothing that we can do to help, and we need to get over it and move on. We go down there in verse 12, it said, and when Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning, and it was told Samuel, saying, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set up him a place, and is gone out and passed on and gone down to Gilgal. Saul's out building monuments to himself. He hasn't got any problem. He thinks he's done what he's supposed to do. And well, let's look at verse 13. It said, and Samuel come to Saul, and Saul said unto him, Blessed be thou of the Lord. I have performed the commandments of the Lord. I'm happy. I've done what God wanted me to do. How are you all today? Verse 14. And Samuel said, What meaneth then this bleating of the sheep in mine ears and the lowing of the oxen which I hear? If you've done what you're supposed to do, what is this noise that I hear in the background here? You see, sometimes those inside a circle think they're doing what they're supposed to do, but those outside the circle see. And I think we're going to see this here in this message today, because those inside the circle are patting themselves on the back, just as Samuel thinking, man, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. But Samuel was seeing it different. Samuel was outside the circle. Saul was inside the circle. And God was outside the circle. He had sent Samuel to correct him and to tell him he was upset and it was not right what was being done. In the 15th verse it said, and Saul said, They have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep. These are the people. And as I read this, I think about Adam, who said, It's that woman you gave me, God, that did this thing. We're always wanting to blame somebody else. He said, For the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice unto the Lord thy God, and the rest we have utterly destroyed. He said, I've done part of what you wanted, but we decided as the people that we would take this good stuff and we're going to give it to the Lord, so we're going to do it in the name of the Lord, so it's okay. Even if we're obeying what God said, we're doing it in the name of the Lord, it's all right. That's not how God saw it. He told him to destroy everything. We did some of what you said, God, so it's okay. Verse 16 says, Then Samuel said unto Saul, Stay, and I will tell thee what the Lord hath said to me this night. And he said unto him, Say on. Saul saying, Tell me what it is that God said to you. In verse 17 it says, And Samuel said, When thou wast little in thine own sight, wast thou not made the head of the tribes of Israel? And the Lord anointed thee king over Israel. God put this upon you. God gave you a chance to serve. God gave you a chance to rule. Verse 18, it said, And the Lord sent thee on a journey and said, now we're going to go back to verse 3 again here. Go and utterly destroy the sinners and the Amalekites and fight against them until they are consumed. And I don't think sometimes that we can grasp that, but consumed, according to the scripture here, means utterly destroyed, make clean, or riddance. I want nothing left. That's what I told you to do, nothing left. Verse 19 says, Wherefore then didst thou not obey the voice of the Lord, but didst fly upon the spoil, and didst evil in the sight of the Lord? You did the opposite of what God said to do. You did not hearken until the words that the God spoke to you. You did not hearken until the words that he spoke and said, This is what I want you to do. And we must hearken to the word. But then when we turn back around here in 20 and 21, and Saul said unto Samuel, Yea, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord, and have gone the way which the Lord has sent me, and have brought back Agag the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. He's not seeing the picture. He's saying, I did something. He's not realizing I didn't do what God wanted, but I did something. Verse 21 there says, But the people took of the spoil, the sheep, the oxen, the chief of the things, which should have been utterly destroyed. He admits here it should have been, but he didn't do what the Lord told him to do. To sacrifice unto the Lord thy God in Gilgal. He can't see that he's not following the orders completely. He's only seeing the part that he did and patting himself on the back thinking, I did a good job. When we get into struggles today, are we inside the circle looking out, or are we outside the circle looking in? Is it okay to do it another way, even if it's not what God said? I want to do it my way. I know what God told him to do, but I think it's all right the way he did it. Is that the attitude we take? We see that God is upset over this, and God is not going to let him reign anymore because he didn't do it the way he was told to do. And we must do things the way we're told to do. Just because we're doing something in the name of the Lord and not doing what the Lord wants is not going to fly. It didn't fly here. He didn't hearken unto the words of the Lord. In verse 22, and Samuel said, hath the Lord as great delight in the burnt offerings and sacrifice and obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. Hearken here means to prick up your ears, to attend, to give heed, to incline to what the Lord has spoken. God wanted him to simply do what he told him to do, nothing more or nothing less, but hearken unto what he had commanded him to do. It is better to obey the Lord. Verse 23 says, for rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is iniquity and idolatry. He's saying, here's the same thing. You've rebelled against me. It's the same as witchcraft. It's the same as stubbornness. It's the same as a sin. And it's the same thing as idolatry, because you're not doing what I told you to do. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, he hath also rejected thee from being king. You didn't do what you were told to do. Now this kingdom is going to be stripped from you. You're not going to be that anymore. In verse 24, and Saul said unto Samuel, I have sinned. For I have transgressed the commandment of the Lord and thy words, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. Finally, Saul sees the big picture. Finally, he sees that he hasn't done what God told him to do. He admits to Samuel that he hasn't done it, and he confesses to Samuel, I've sinned. I need forgiveness. I'm seeing the big picture here. I've stepped outside the circle. I'm not in my own little world, and I see what the word means for me here today. He obeyed man rather than obeying God. Jesus says that we are to hearken unto his words, and I want to end this here today. Go back to John with me, in the book of John, the 15th chapter. And I read these same verses last week, bringing up services. God wants us to hearken unto his word, and this is Jesus Christ, who is the word, who's talking to us in the 15th chapter of John here. He says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. The husbandman is the gardener, so to speak, of a vineyard here we're talking about, and they're the caregiver. And Jesus is the vine, and God is the one that takes care. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth much fruit. Now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself. If we don't have the word of God grounded in us, we're not going to bear fruit. Except it abide in the vine, no more can ye except you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me you can do nothing. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as branch and is withered, and men gather them and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. Saul was not obedient to what God said. he took part of what he wanted to do, and then he decided that he would obey man. He thought he was doing a good thing, I'm guessing, but it wasn't what God said to do. So we must be obedient and hearken to what God tells us to do. As we stand and sing number 644.